And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us again for the marine forecast here. Starting off with tonight's forecast, intense low center currently down in this area, tracks right up to the north here, bringing coastal flooding and high wind warnings out here from the Pribilof Islands. Possible gusts of 95 miles an hour there as that tracks by just to the west of them and goes right up in toward St. Lawrence Island, just south of St. Lawrence Island, with coastal flood warnings advancing up the coastline tonight, at least to the Bering Strait, with high wind warnings ahead of this front right into the central or west central interior, high wind advisories, central interior from the Kuskokwim Valley southward into the Alaska Range and northern Kuskokwim Valley. For the advisory level winds gusting 40 to 60 miles an hour and the warning winds anywhere from 60 to 80 miles per hour, with a mixture of precipitation here north of the occluded front along the northwest coast into the Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley or the Kobuk Valley, Selawik Valley areas, and along the northwest coast, dry to the north and the east here, fair over the Panhandle, but rain moving into south central Alaska. But this front goes to pieces tomorrow afternoon, breaking up into a couple of troughs here as a cold front here comes on shore and brings rain into the Yukon Delta. Much lighter winds as this low center tracks northward and weakens. Still looking at the coastal flood warnings now from the Yukon Delta coast up to the central Arctic coast. Actually a coastal flood watch out for the central Arctic coast, with the warnings back along the western coast southward to the Seward Peninsula there in the Bering Strait coastline, with the high wind warnings extending into tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon here in the north. And wet, showery, rainy conditions for the Bering Sea and the western Aleutians. Another low, much weaker here, much weaker, tracks up toward the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow afternoon. The warm front associated with that brings rain into Kodiak Island, keeps it wet there up to the North Gulf Coast. And that tracks northeastward here to the Susitna Valley by Monday afternoon. So rain for the Susitna Valley, northern Cook Inlet, changing to showers, southern Cook Inlet and the southern Kenai Peninsula, changing to partly sunny skies for Kodiak Island in the afternoon. Areas of rain across the southwest interior with light winds. Strong storm takes off to the northeast there just west of Banks Island by the afternoon. So that'll bring some brisk west winds, snow and blowing snow to the eastern Boulevard Sea coast. Otherwise just snow showers or light snow here with this trough over the western Brooks Range down into the northern Seward Peninsula. Windy and wet conditions, pretty unsettled out over the Bering Sea with a couple of weaker lows there. And you can see some rain making its way into the north and central coast of the Panhandle. Another system down here to the southwest tracks right up to the northeast to just south of Yakutat. That front will bring more rain into the southeast coast. Light rain, nothing too heavy, with rain and snow into the southeast interior. A break here in the central part of the state, but south to north winds here pretty widespread all the way from off the chart. And then another strong system here pulling into the east central Aleutians there, with strong storm and gale force winds around that into the Alaska Peninsula. Could see possible high wind warnings out for the peninsula there, as well as the eastern Aleutians, with windy, wet conditions all along the west coast, actually in across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta there into the mid-Yukon River Valley. And then for the afternoon, or from Wednesday morning, this low tracks up into the southeast Bering Sea here again with a very strong wind field and tight pressure gradient around that center. Rain pushes back into Kodiak Island, very windy conditions here. And by late Wednesday afternoon and evening, that low center is going to track right into Kuskokwim Bay for probably coastal flood warnings back into Bristol Bay, with high wind warnings as well for the southwest coast and the Alaska Peninsula. By contrast, dry and mild in the eastern and central part of the state, although winds on the increase here Wednesday afternoon, or during the day Wednesday over south central Alaska, especially over the mountains or higher elevations here. Showers will be diminishing over the Panhandle. And for the coastal water forecast, we've got northeast breeze at 10 knots for Prince of Wales Island tomorrow, southeast 10 to 15 knots on the central coast, and then southeast to east 20 to 35 knots for the north coast. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Stevens Passage, northeast at 10, seas 2 feet, north at 15 for Clarence Strait with 3-foot seas. And for Monday, Along the south coast, south winds 15 to 20 knots, and south to southeast winds 25 to 30 knots to the central coast, and east southeast 30 to 35 knot winds for the north coast, with seas 8 to 9 feet in the north and about 7 feet to the south. And for Clarence Strait, north at 10, southeast 15 for Stevens Passage, picking up to 20 knots out of the southeast for Lynn Canal with 4-foot seas. Prince William Sound tomorrow, east winds 25 knots, good for small craft advisories, gales for the eastern North Gulf Coast. East winds 35 knots with 9-foot seas, northeast at 30 knots for the western North Gulf Coast. Southeast at 30 for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, Cook Inlet, northeast wind 15 to 20 knots. And for the day Monday, Prince William Sound, southeast winds 25 knots, south to southeasterlies for the eastern North Gulf Coast at 25 to 30 knots, northeast 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands. And for Cook Inlet, light east-northeast winds at 10 and about 15 knots out of the east for Kamishak Bay. Kodiak Island tomorrow, southwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Bristol Bay, southwest at 20, seas 9 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, we've got south to southwest winds at 20 knots with seas running 9 to 14 feet. And for Monday, for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southwest winds 20 to 25 knots, seas 6 to 11 feet. Southwest at 15 for Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, west winds 20 knots, 5 to 8 foot seas. And for the eastern Aleutians on Sunday, south to southwest winds 20 to 25 knots, seas up to 16 feet. And southwest 25 to 30 knots for the central Aleutians, and out to the west, small craft advisories as well, with southwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Then for the day Monday, for the western Aleutians, west of Kiska, west-northwest winds at 25 knots. And for Amchitka Island, southwest 25 to 35 knots. Otherwise, southwest at 30 for Adak and Atka. And the eastern Aleutians, south winds 30 knots, seas 6 to 12 feet. And strong winds tomorrow here for the southwest coast, with that low center tracking northward right about through this area here, with that northwest wind at 55 knots at St. Matthew Island. Otherwise strong southwest winds at 60 knots right into Kuskokwim Bay. And got typhoon force winds here for the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island area, up to 65 knots. South winds at 60 knots there for Norton Sound. That'll bring some crash banging waves into the south coast of the Seward Peninsula for sure. And then for the day on Monday, much lighter wind conditions for Norton Sound, southwest at 20 knots, seas down to 5 feet. And for St. Lawrence Island as well, light winds, Yukon Delta coast, south 15, south 20 for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, Pribilof south at 20, east winds 20 knots for St. Matthew Island. And for the Arctic coast tomorrow, look for east winds 20 to 30 knots, strongest here from Point Lay to Cape Lisburne, and then gales out of the southeast there for the Chukchi Sea, 40 to 45 knots with 8 to 10 foot seas. And then for the day on Monday, strong gales here on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, with that low center tracking off to the east there and northeast. Southwest 40 knots, 8 foot seas there, west at 30 for the central Arctic coast, and northwest 25 for the western coast, the Chukchi Sea, west winds at 25 knots.